know what the best marketing is? Sold out. We start with the faltering Eagles. Peter King writing plainly, "This is one of the weirdest collapses I've seen in 40 years of covering the NFL."
Yeah.
Here's Nick Sirianni.
Anyone can lead in times of, when times are easy. When times are hard, this is when you see what you're made of and how you lead. And so, I look at it as a challenge that, I know we can get out of this slump that we're in. It's my job to make sure that we do. And I look at it as a challenge and how sweet it will be when we do get out of it, because I know we will, and I know we got the right guys to get out of it.
Okay. Eagles, since starting 10-1, tied for the second worst record at 1-5. Point differential is -10. They've got they're allowing the most touchdowns, 21, and the turnover differential is -8. That's worse than the league too.
Yeah,
that's a tough one. What would a first-round exit mean for Philadelphia?
Well, I think Nick Sirianni took the words out of my mouth, except for the end. He's right. Leading from ahead's easy, and it is his job to pull them out of it. It is where you determine what type of leader a guy is. It is where you determine how good of a coach we actually have, which is why this 6-game stretch is so damning, because it's not only the raw numbers that you put, Wilds, but it's the context of it. Because the first game was against the team you had circled all year, had circled you all year. You could have essentially locked up the 1 seed with 6 weeks to go. It would have been the Niners' 4th loss. You would have had 1, and you'd have had the head-to-head. They trounced you. Then you could have locked up, at the very least, the division with 5 weeks to go by sweeping Dallas, by giving them their 4th loss when you only had 2, and they trounced you. Then you let Drew Lock go 92 yards in the only relevant moment thus far of his NFL career.
Hey, no, he had the Buzz Lightyear thing.
And then the soft part of your schedule started, and you played worse in every single game. First game against the Giants was bad, but you won.
Yeah.
Second game against the Cardinals was a disaster. And the third game, you were down 24-0 at halftime to Tyrod Taylor and the Giants. 24-0. We're the bad thumb with your starters playing. So I say all that to say this. They lose Monday night, he could get fired.
Well, okay.
So
should he, in your view?
Well, can I answer that part in a second? Because there's a reason I would say yes to it. I know people think it's reactionary. Bill Callahan took the Raiders to the Super Bowl. The next year he was fired. John Fox was 46-18 in 4 years with Denver. 4 division titles, a Super Bowl appearance in round 2 every year. Fired. The idea that Jim Caldwell fired 2 years after taking the team to a Super Bowl with the Colts, I think it was a mistake, but still they did it. And the year they fired him for, they were intentionally tanking, and they still fired him. So this idea of, I went to a Super Bowl, my job is safe, not necessarily. And so here's where I would definitively do it. If I got word that Belichick would take the job. That if I got word that if this job came open, Belichick would force his way out of New England, and maybe with Vrabel now being gone, I know we'll get to it, he'll just be forced out, then I would definitively do it. Even because here's the question I would ask you guys, because Wild, you said something interesting yesterday. You brought up the Callahan tweet. You were like, if Belichick got fired, wouldn't he be the hottest commodity?
Yeah.
If the Eagles didn't have Sirianni as the head coach and needed a head coach, would they even consider him? If Sirianni got fired today, would he be at the top, the middle, or not existent on the next coach hiring cycle?
He's probably not. Look, the Belichick thing is interesting. I mean, if that's a possibility, you have a quarterback who I actually think would work with Belichick.
Yep.
High character, all the skills. I think they work great. Mm-hmm. And obviously their big problem is defense. Belichick straightens that out.
And Matt Patricia's there already.
Yeah, he's in there kind of
maybe they'll make him the offensive coordinator.
Love that.
So that's a monkey wrench. You throw that in there, and then it's like, okay, if I can get Belichick. But barring all that, I don't fire him. He's been to the – and I'm not saying he's a phenomenal coach. Every year they've been to the playoffs, 3 straight years, one of them in the Super Bowl. He took them from being a 4-win team to making the playoffs. He oversaw – I mean, look, we got to give the head coach some credit no matter who was the hands-on guy. He oversaw the growth of Jalen Hurts from being a guy that we didn't even know would be a long-time starter into an MVP candidate, okay? And the other thing is this. the Super Bowl slump, or what we call it, hangover,
Yeah.
it is real sometimes. And I think perhaps this is a delayed version of the Super Bowl slump. They started 10-1. It looked like, wow, it wasn't an issue with them. And then now it's hit them. And look at these names that have fallen victim to a Super Bowl hangover, if you will. Pete Carroll in 2015. They made the playoffs, but they go out early. Peyton Manning in Denver, what you mentioned with John Fox, but when they went to the Super Bowl and then they lost as the number 2 seed, they lost their first playoff game to Indianapolis, his former team. Cam Newton, the year they made the Super Bowl, they didn't even make the playoffs the next year with Ron Rivera. And then Sean McVay and Jared Goff as his quarterback. Get to the Super Bowl, lose to Belichick, don't make the playoffs the next year. These are good coaches. And obviously some great players that fell victim to this. So I'm only saying I would give him another chance. He has been successful there. An 11-win season is not horrible. And I get it that, I'd give him next year. He'd pretty much start on the hot seat next year. But I would not fire him this year after that type of success.
Even if they, and this is again, but to be clear, if I didn't say it, this is assuming they lose Monday. Obviously, if they win Monday, I don't think there's really any chance he wouldn't be fired. But go ahead.
You think you put more of this on Sirianni than sort of the brain drain of losing both coordinators and having Jalen not be 100%?
So I put some of that. I don't put losing the coordinators on Sirianni. I think they got objectively worse at defensive coordinator. That was his choice during the season, going from Desai to Patricia. The idea, and I know Coach Mangini was talking about, they've gotten better against the pass since that's happened.
They just switched it up.
Yeah, but I don't think that's right. I think what happened is they've gotten to play Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, Tyrod Taylor, and the Cardinals, and so and by the way, Kyler then cooked them up. Right. I think that they were playing tough quarterbacks early in the year. They got weaker quarterbacks later. I think I watched the defense had. Shout out to Sheil Kapadia for pointing this out. A 10-drive stretch versus the Cardinals and Tyrod Taylor where they allowed 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so that he's not a defensive coach, but they got worse with that. I also put some of what is happening to if we're going to give him credit for the growth of Jalen, right, then the flip side of that coin is we have seen the other side of that mountain come down. Now, if that's just injury related, so be it. Then go to your offensive coordinator and say, as the offensive-minded head coach, stop using him as a power back. They haven't. That's the.
You're talking about just the tush push?
No, I'm talking about so much of the quarterback-driven runs. That's a huge part of their offense.
I don't think he's running quite as much.
They're not protecting him. They're not treating him like an injured player. My question to the audience would be, to anyone, what does Nick Sirianni currently do well?
I know, but he's a little bit of like...
What?
It feels like you're treating him like the coaching version of Brock Purdy, where it's like this offense, everything was lined up and given to them on a platter. So now he didn't do anything to get to the Super Bowl. It was kind of just like, all right, roll the ball out and start playing.
And let's face it, it's results. Period. All right, it's results. Sean McVay was being questioned for a minute. Now, all of a sudden, everybody loves him again. Matt LaFleur was being questioned at one point without Aaron Rodgers, or with Aaron Rodgers missing the playoffs. Now, all of a sudden, everybody loves him again. So it's just results. Look, the guy's gotten results. This is one bad year. I mean, they're still making the playoffs with 11 wins, and we'll see what happens in the first round. But no, I think we look at the coordinators that left.